Imagine walking into a place so ordinary, so mundane, you could navigate it blindfolded. But then, with a single step, it transforms into something otherworldly, a labyrinth of frozen time, shifting spaces, and endless confusion. In this story, you'll follow one woman's harrowing journey into an impossible grocery store where reality bends and escape feels like a distant dream. Welcome to Echoes in the Dark. It began on an unremarkable Tuesday evening. Diane Evans, a 32-year-old woman, stopped by her local grocery store on her way home. She'd been there countless times, picking up milk or bread with the same fluorescent lights humming overhead. This time, however, something felt off. As she stepped inside, Diane noticed an uncanny stillness. The usual bustle of shoppers and the faint chatter of employees were absent. The automatic doors swished closed behind her, and silence blanketed the space. At first, she thought the store was simply empty, but as she moved further inside, something became disturbingly clear. Time itself had stopped. The clock on the wall ticked 7:32 p.m. and remained there. A cart left mid-aisle was frozen in place, its wheels hanging just above the floor as though caught mid-motion. Even the dangling price tag seemed suspended in the air. A shiver crept down her spine, but Diane shook it off. "Power outage?" she whispered, though the lights glared as brightly as ever. She reached for her phone to call someone, anyone, but there was no signal. Determined to leave, Diane turned back toward the entrance, but the sliding doors were gone. In their place was a blank wall. Panic began to rise, but she told herself to stay calm. She could find another exit, surely. Yet, as she moved through the aisles, the shelves seemed to stretch endlessly. Worse, the aisles themselves began to change. The bread section merged with canned goods, and the freezer section seemed to fold in on itself, appearing in places it shouldn't. Hours passed, or at least it felt like hours. Diane's watch still read 7:32 p.m. She tried yelling, banging on shelves, and even knocking over displays in frustration. The sound echoed into nothingness. Then came the whispers, faint at first, like someone muttering just out of earshot. But when she turned corners to find the source, there was no one there. The food she hadn't touched began to appear in her cart: a box of cereal, a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread. Items she didn't need or hadn't even noticed before. And then she saw something that made her stomach lurch. A figure. Not human, not quite. A tall, shadowy silhouette stood at the end of an aisle, its face obscured but its glowing eyes fixed on her. Diane froze, but when she blinked, it was gone. Sleep was impossible. Diane tried sitting against a wall, hoping the nightmare would end, but her surroundings wouldn't allow it. The aisles rearranged themselves, shelves spiraled into impossible angles, and doors led to nowhere. Hunger gnawed at her, and she ate some of the strange food that kept appearing in her cart, though it tasted bland and unrecognizable. On what felt like the third or fourth day, though time had become meaningless, Diane noticed something new. A wooden door stood in the middle of an aisle. It wasn't attached to a wall or frame, just freestanding. When she turned the knob, a bright light engulfed her. She woke up in her car, parked in front of the store. Her watch read 7:45 p.m. Just 13 minutes had passed since she first entered. Shaken, she started her car and sped away. But as she drove home, she realized something chilling. The box of cereal, gallon of milk, and loaf of bread were in her back seat. Diane's experience remains a mystery, one she struggles to talk about even years later. Was it a hallucination? A glitch in reality? A doorway to another dimension? While skeptics dismiss her story as a fabrication or mental lapse, others believe her. What happened inside that store? Could there be places where reality thins, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary and dangerous? Perhaps there are spaces in our world that don't follow the rules we know, waiting to ensnare those unlucky enough to stumble upon them. One thing is certain, Diane no longer shops at night, and she always avoids the grocery store on her way home. Could you blame her?